All right, it's 5 o'clock, with Prince George Board of Supervisors meeting. Would you call the roll, please, for attendance?
Mr. Hunter,
Here.
Mr. Carmichael,
Here.
Mr. Brown,
Here.
Mrs. Waymack,
I'm here electronically because of a health reason, and I am speaking from my home on Laurel Spring Road.
Mr. Webb.
Here.
Thank you. We are being electronically televised, are we? Okay. Next is invocation. Mr. Brown, if you would, please.
Yes, sir. Heavenly Father, we come to you this evening to say thank you. Thank you for allowing us to see yesterday. Thank you for allowing us to wake up and see today. Heavenly Father, we ask this evening that you be with us as we go through this budget work session. Allow us to work together and figure things out for the betterment of Prince George County. Heavenly Father, we also ask you this evening to watch over all of our first responders, our fire, EMS, our police. We ask you to bless all of the residents here in the county, all of the staff workers here in this county for what they do each and every day, and more especially during this time of COVID-19. And Heavenly Father, we also ask you this evening to watch over our county administrator as he works hard to lead and guide this county each and every day. We ask all of this in your name. Amen.
Amen. Mr. Carmichael, will you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, gentlemen. Next, we have adoption of the agenda, but I just want to make one comment first. Mr. Brown, I understand that your dad, who is a citizen that works a lot hard for the Prince George County, had a procedure and turned out well today, so we're thankful for that.
Yes, sir. He came back home. He was discharged this evening.
That's good news. Okay, with that in mind, I entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, call the roll, please.
Mr. Carmichael.
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mrs. Waymack,
Yes.
Mr. Webb,
Yes.
Mr. Hunter.
Yes. Reports. Are there any reports specifically? So we'll go right into the work session. The first thing we have is discussion of concealed weapons permit fees.
I'll begin with Mr. Hunter.
All right, please.
The
Mr.
packet
Rose.
that you received, the first section of that was related to the concealed weapon permit fee. The county currently collects and charges the maximum $50. $5 of that goes to the state and $10 goes to the comp board. The county retains $35 as the local portion of that, and that is deposited in the revenue account code, which you see to the right of that $35. The description of that account code is record cost clerk of court. For the FY21 budget, we have $30,000 of revenue currently budgeted. I know there was some discussion perhaps about reducing that fee, and we have not provided you with an opportunity to have those discussions and talk about the dollar impact for potentially reducing those fees. Each dollar that you reduce that fee will result in about $857 in revenue reduction on the county proposed budget for FY21. I don't believe that the sheriff nor the clerk of court recommend a reduction. That is I believe is it a 5-year permit, Bucky?
That was going to be my question.
So about $10 a year is what it works out for the constituent. And I don't know that any other counties or cities charge less than the maximum other than maybe Chesterfield currently. So our neighboring localities, I believe, are charging the full $50 maximum. And there are costs, of course, involved in issuing those
and
permits.
processing, what have you.
Yes, sir.
I'm familiar with that. And, with the state of our situation right now, I can't see reducing it at this point. I don't think $10 a year is an excessive amount to ask them to pay.
I agree.
Okay.
No, it's fine.
Well, as we get into the general fund balancing, we'll leave that at zero when we get to item 4D. That is one of the revenue considerations. We just wanted to provide you with an opportunity to further discuss it and act on it if you decided to do so.
All right, Ms. Waymack, did you hear that discussion and have any comments, ma'am?
Yes, I did, and that is, what stays with the county? How much do we get out of the $50?
35.
35.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Go
All
ahead.
right, thank you.
Thank you. So you'll address that later, but
Yes, sir.
we are
Yes,
in
sir.
accord with leaving. All right, thank you.
Sure. The second item is our VACOR renewal, and specifically increases that we are going to be experiencing with our workers' compensation and line of duty act coverage for our, and specifically for our first responders. The General Assembly approved some legislation to expand workers' comp coverage to cover certain additional types of cancers for our fire EMTs. And also they approved coverage for post-traumatic stress disorder. And the governor has signed the cancer extension, workers' comp expansion. I'm not positive whether he has signed the PTSD yet. However, VACOR has filed their insurance rates with the insurance board, and those increases are being passed on. If that legislation changes, we will probably receive that in a credit, but right now we do have to plan for those increases.
Before you continue, do we have a handout we're following you on? The screen's not what you're
Well,
talking
right
about.
now, it's simply just a memo.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Rougher looking.
I was trying to find this.
Let me scroll down.
I was gonna whisper it because I didn't see Mr. Ronald Webb looking too hard. Maybe I missed
Yes, yes, this, and I've got it up on the screen now.
All right, thank you.
So our workers' comp, specifically, I had already provided you with an update that our experience modification had increased from a 0.89 to a 0.98 based on claims that we've had during the last year. One of those was probably related to a workplace incident that we had, but 8.98 is still good. It's still below 1. 1 is where you expect claims to be, a normal organization. But even though it's good, it does result in an increase in what we have to pay for our coverage for FY21. And in addition, as I mentioned, the legislation for our first responders is going to create an increase. Our line of duty act coverage will also increase by over $3,800 more than what we had indicated in the proposed budget. So when we get to 4D, the general fund balancing, amidst all the reductions, unfortunately, we're going to see increases in workers' comp and LODA.
That's all that we added back.
Right, yes, sir. So we have to make provisions to pay those increased costs.
Was it just one incident that took place that made it jump to 0.98? Because I know the Mod's rating is 1.00. Anything other than that, if you're a contractor, construction worker trying to get on Fort Lee, they will not let you on there doing any work if you're above a 1.00. So
I'm not positive of the exact specifics of how they derived it. It is our claims experience over the last year, though.
but not an increase in on-the-job accidents or one specific accident?
There was one specific incident in the utilities department, if you recall.
Which we understand, yeah.
Yes, sir. That probably
First
contributed significantly to that increase.
Yes, okay.
Okay. So any questions on that before I move to the?
That basically covers the reason for that increase.
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
All right. The next item is Diving into recommended reductions in our proposed FY21 budget, not only in the general fund, but in the tourism, economic development, and utilities funds. All of those specific funds will have changes, either from proposed increases that we may or may not be implementing, and due to the impacts of COVID-19 on our revenue, projected revenues for FY21. I had sent you just a memo on Friday related to the non-general fund, but I have had an opportunity to meet with Mr. Stoke, who manages the Tourism and Economic Development Fund budgets, as well as Mr. Halton, our Utilities Director. So we do have specifics. So I'm going to switch over to spreadsheet format where we can walk through the projected changes in the various fund budgets. The first fund, which is on the agenda, is the tourism fund. And that fund, a portion of our lodging tax goes into that fund. And that is the only revenue source in the tourism fund. Our current tourism or lodging tax rate is a 5% tax on hotel stays within Prince George County. And 3 cents or 3%, that 3% tax is deposited in the tourism fund. The other 2% tax goes into the general fund. And that is the maximum that we can deposit into the general fund. So COVID-19 is expected to have an impact on our lodging tax revenues as proposed. So we are projecting about a $135,660 loss in revenues in fiscal year 21. So we would need to reduce the budget by that amount. In addition to that, we had, Mr. Stoke had led the charge to increase that lodging tax by 2% to a total of 7%.
Right.
And the governor did approve that, but you as a local board have not had an opportunity to consider the ordinance change. So for purposes of adoption, we are recommending that we don't include those increased revenues until you've had an opportunity to weigh in and decide whether to change the ordinance for FY21 and at what time frame you might want to do that. So
We can bring that on pretty much anytime we want.
I believe Mr. Witten is going to bring you some legislative updates, one of which will be that tax. But yes, sir, you could act on that when you chose,
Okay,
now
so
that the
we
governor
start-
has approved it.
okay.
That's my understanding.
All right, thank you.
So all told, we would need to reduce our tourism fund budget from the proposed $678,298 downward by $406,979 for a revised budget of $271,319. So those are some fairly significant reductions. So I'll cover the expense items one by one, and please stop me if you have questions as we work through these. We presently had a part-time sports tourism coordinator, along with Social Security and Medicare tax budgeted for a total of $37,593. That individual that was in that position this year resigned effective March 20. So we are suggesting eliminating that part-time sports tourism coordinator for FY21.
I agree with that.
Yeah, at least, yeah, not refill it this year.
Yes, sir. As I met with Mr. Stoke, he indicated that we could eliminate any advertising for FY21 for a savings of $1,000. convention and education would be eliminated by $1,000. Of course, we provide a percentage of our collected revenues to the Regional Heritage Center. So the 7.5% that we would distribute to them did reduce. So that is a reduction of $30,523 from what was
If that's a
proposed.
reduction, how much are they still getting? Or is that all of their money they would have got?
No, sir, that is not all of the money. Bear with me just one moment, and
Okay.
let me open the budget documents.
You're
and
fine.
I can provide you with the answer to that.
As long as they're getting something, I don't need to, is that, you're fine with that?
Well, let me open it. That way I can respond to questions. If you bear with me just a second, I'll have an answer. What was proposed for the Regional Heritage Center when revenues were looking promising and with the 2% increase was $50,872. With that reduction, their contribution would go down to $20,349, which is $12,651 less than they're targeted to get this year. However, revenues will be sluggish this year, and we will probably transfer less than the budgeted amount for this year even, because it is based on a percentage of actual collections. The next item, there had been a provision of $40,000 in the proposed budget for ball tournament expenditures. There is a recommended reduction of $38,135, leaving $1,865 available. Fire and EMS Museum planning was budgeted for $40,000. That is slated for elimination. Eliminating any operating supplies to be purchased from tourism, and then reducing the operation and maintenance budget for exit 45 from 20 to 10,000, and then eliminating the contingency which was at 247,528.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir, please.
That, exit 45, where's Mr. Stokes at? This reduction on the, what's the line item 9? No, 10. Is that the maintenance and all that we went through with the owners of the hotels up there for maintaining that area up there? Is that part of that?
Mr. Webb, we have a memorandum of understanding with the Cameron Foundation to maintain that exit.
Right.
And so that cost is to maintain that exit as far as irrigation costs for water, replanting when things die, the electricity for the lights.
Right.
Those are the costs. Usually we budget like a couple $1,000s to replace the plants, and we'll just cut back this year on what is required to be replaced.
Okay, well, I was just asking, I thought that's what it might have been tied to. Okay, thank you.
And then finally is eliminating any contingency within the tourism fund, and that would balance it to 271,319. Pretty bare bones. What would remain, again, would be pretty bare bones. The current year tourism budget is $440,000. So again, that's a sizable reduction from even the current year budget.
But all of this is just for us to be able to get an initial budget,
Correct.
but still, we have the option of
A raise.
reviewing it throughout various periods of the budget year.
Yes, sir.
And if things are tracking better than what we anticipated, then we always have the right to come back and amend the budget.
That is
Sure.
correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Correct, yeah.
If we amend by more than 1%, we would have to advertise a public hearing
Correct.
prior to the amendment.
Correct.
Is that 1% overall or 1% in any particular item?
Total,
Total.
total,
Gotcha.
unless Mr. Whitten disagrees. Okay. All right. Are there any objections to any of the recommended reductions at this time?
No.
I'm okay with it.
I'm fine.
Mrs. Waymack?
Mrs. Waymack, are you familiar with what's going on, and do you have any comments?
No, I'm trying to follow.
Okay, all right, we pretty much finished at page 1.
Mrs. Knott should have delivered a updated packet to you today, and it's, the handout that we are on now is at the top, it has agenda item 3A. And,
Yes,
Okay,
okay, I
okay.
have that.
okay,
Super. All right. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
so if there are no objections, I will, after this meeting, just indicate that you agree by consensus to these reductions to balance. Okay. The next fund is the Economic Development Fund, and Mrs. Waymack, that is on the next page of that handout. At the top, it has 3B.
Okay,
See you.
thank you.
The Economic Development Fund is supported entirely by meals tax revenue, and we are projecting an impact of $260,000 to the meals tax revenue. We had proposed a budget of $1.3 million, and would need to reduce to $1,040,000. To make that $260,000 reduction, again, we would eliminate a planned pay increase for compression for an individual within the Economic Development Fund. You'll find a similar reduction within the general fund to balance. That's a $609 savings. We would eliminate any professional services from economic development. We would also eliminate any advertising from economic development funds. We would reduce planned subsistence and lodging from $5,000 to $1,000, which is an 80% reduction. We would reduce convention and education by 50%. You will see a similar reduction within the general fund budgets from $20,000 to $10,000. We would reduce contributions. The Virginia Gateway region reached out offering a 50% reduction in their contribution for FY21 due to the pandemic. So we are certainly going to take them up on that
I
offer.
think all of us got the email, Jonathan. Mr. Ashcraft, somebody sent it out, but we all got it.
A very welcome concession for us right now.
Keith contacted us, and we made sure all the employees saw that. That was great.
Yeah, that was very, very nice. This machine and tools tax rebate, we had planned to bring to you at adoption anyway. Our proposed budget included an estimate of a rebate of over $216,000. The actual rebate that we will have to pay in July is just over $112,000. So that will be a $104,235 savings. Mr. Stoke recommended a reduction in office supplies down to $100, reduction of $2,900. Eliminating the food budget within economic development, which is $500. Reducing the fuel budget. Economic Development Fund does have 2 vehicles, and they will reduce by $400.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
I might as well ask this question now because I've already read through this. When we start talking about fuel for vehicles and all, Mr. Stoke, you've got a pretty good handle on, at least for the first quarter. Till we get to the first quarter, as far as, depending on where we're at, that is gonna be enough for the fuel. Cause I know we've got it on the vehicles and all throughout the county and all too, especially when we get the police, fire, and EMS, which I'm not interested in cutting that at all, because I think it'd be foolish, but either way.
Mr. Webb, my estimates were not only based on the price of gas itself, but by the sheer, we are not going to have as many business prospect visits. We are not going to be going places to trade shows. We're not going to be doing a lot of face-to-face visits with the business community. It'll go to phone and email. And so that will, by its very nature, reduce the amount of gas we use.
I thought that's what it was, but for the public, I wanted to get some information. Thank you.
Good question, Mr. Webb.
Yes, sir. And at the call that I participate in each Wednesday, fuel prices are still down. And, there's a bidding war, or right now, there's a glut of supply,
Yep.
bidding war between, I think, Russia and Saudi Arabia. So prices are down right now. We don't know that they'll remain down, but initially that's.
That's what I said the other day, if you got the money, you can afford to stockpile it and put it in the drum, now's the time to do it.
Right. Yeah, big tank at home. Yep. So you will see a similar reductions within the general fund, and certainly, we will have to spend what we need to spend, but initially we did make a reduction to balance. Also, concurrently, he reduced or recommended a reduction of vehicle equipment and supplies from 300 to 100, reduction of $200. And then we had planned on using economic development funds to purchase 2 vehicles so that Mr. Stoke would be able to transfer the 2 vehicles in his fleet now to community development co-compliance and to the assessor so that they would have newer models. We will just postpone that until we have a handle on that. Also, we had planned to expand career development opportunities to economic development in FY21. We are putting a recommendation in that we just postpone expansion of career development in FY21. Mr. Webb actually reached out on Sunday, and I sent you an updated general fund document on Monday that had a similar reduction in the general fund.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I can expand on that.
Yes, sir, please.
Because of the timing, if people are already engaged, I'm not saying cut it off. What I'm asking is if we haven't started anything new and don't expand, just put a hold on it for now until we see where we're at.
Well,
Education's great, but I mean, it's still a cost associated with it.
I totally agree. Until we can see where we're going with this economy,
Then we can get back
we need
to
to be
talking.
cautious. And as Mr. Brewer said, we can always, even if we have to go to public hearings for more than a percentage, I would love to have that problem.
Right. I'm good, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for the question.
And then the last item number 15, would be to reduce the proposed contingency down to $8,120, which is a reduction of $48,341, and that would balance us at $1,040,000. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have on these.
For me, I'm good with it, Ms. Sharon.
That covers, Ms. Waymack, that covers page 2. Did you have any questions, ma'am?
No, I didn't, thank you.
Thank you.
I don't have any questions, but I do thank, Mr. Stoke and anyone else that worked on these 2 so far, because it's some pretty drastic cuts.
No doubt.
And so I appreciate them taking the time to go through and at least get us in the starting gate so that we can get a budget finalized.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The next fund is the utilities fund, and I worked with Mr. Haltom on these reductions and changes. The memo indicated to just remove the water and sewer fee, or proposed water and sewer fee increases, but there were some additional line items as he dug into the details that he felt we should reduce as well, just based on trend information and impacts on maybe not collecting penalties because we're not cutting people off
Right.
or reconnection fees. So to go through the revenue line items, the initial proposed utilities fund budgets totaled $8,759,034. Net of transfers between the utility funds, just over $6.93 million. The first reduction would be to remove the proposed water fee increase of 3%. That's a reduction of $98,850. The second reduction would be to remove the proposed sewer fee increase of 1%. That's another $41,850 reduction. The next line item, there was a slight increase in water service revenues. He felt that he could comfortably increase, but the net reduction is $72,000 in water services for FY21 when I add the top line and that line, 1 and 3. There was a downward trend in sewer, so all told, the sewer service reduction is $61,850, caused by both trend and removing that 1% increase. He further suggested that we reduce penalty revenues, again, because, you know, we're trying to be compassionate during this time about charging penalty. And in fact, you approved an emergency ordinance to do that for at least part of the year. Then to also reduce reconnection charges where we won't be disrupting service. He also recommends reducing miscellaneous revenues by $7,500 and eliminating the planned use of fund balance and reducing his transfer from utilities operating fund to the utilities capital fund because of some capital changes that he's recommending within expenditures. Any questions on those revenue changes?
I'm good, Mr. Chair.
That's right. 256,521.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's fine.
I just have one question, and I think this is on the revenue side. Do we know how many customers we have that are sewer, I think it's sewer only? Because that's the one where they pay a flat rate, correct?
Yes, sir. I may have that information in the county administrator's budget message. If you bear with me just a minute, I can dig that up.
Where?
Try to get you some help, that's.
Okay.
And Mr. Holton, where I'm going with this is, I know when we went up before, I got quite a few calls from people that were on sewer only, paying that flat rate, and most of them they live by themselves. So it's not like their sewer usage increased. Most of them are on fixed incomes. So I didn't know if there was, you know, if you tell me really how many or what that number is for revenue for only the sewer only folks.
The revenues for the sewer only, I don't know if I know that off the top of my head. I know we talked about making a change. If we made a change to reduce that fee,
Yes, sir.
we would probably need to make up about $60,000 to make up that change. So there are ways to manipulate that. We need to do that. Obviously, we wouldn't reduce some of those revenues if possible. But that is something we could look at. But right now, this net budget does not include the reduction in those flat rate fees.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I'm not asking you to go away and do it just yet.
Of course, there's no increase either, right?
Correct, there's no increase.
No increase, but no decrease.
No decrease either.
Okay.
Thank you.
Got what you need.
Yes, yes, sir, thank you.
You have other questions about page 3?
No, sir, I'm good with it. You've got another page besides it.
Yes, she was just covering
The
the
expenditure changes for utilities are recapped on the next page, page 4.
All right. Ms. Wayback, you good with page 3?
Yes, I'm good.
All right, we're moving on to 4 then.
After speaking with Mr. Holtum, because of changes that he's recommending within the capital program, he recommends removing the newly proposed engineering technician, but would like to keep the meter technician that was proposed. So again, this is with reduction of one of two newly proposed positions. He felt the meter technician was essential. Again, probably going back to the workplace incident and a number of other needs within that department. So that is a savings of $104,439. Similarly to the economic development and general fund, which you'll see in a few minutes, we would remove the proposed compression pay increases at a savings of $16,000. We would reduce convention and education by 50% for a $4,500 savings. We would reduce dues and memberships of $500, which were tied to this newly proposed position. He recommends reducing food by 50%, $500, and reducing fuel by $4,000, similar to the other funds. We certainly will need to spend what we need to spend, but pricing is down right now. And perhaps that will stay in place for a while and generate some savings. $4,000 reduction there. We would also reduce the utilities operating fund transfer to the capital reserve fund, Fund 620, by $72,171. And that is predicated on not doing any borrowing in FY21 and only completing capital maintenance projects that could be cash funded within utilities. And he would prioritize those projects and bring you those projects for approval throughout the year. We would increase the payroll contingency. There is an individual within the utilities department that he would like to consider for an upgrade from a 2 to a 3. So he'll bring that to you. That's a small contingency to balance the operating fund. Line item 18, items 18 and 19, we would remove principal repayment and interest repayment if we don't do a borrowing in FY21. And subsequently, he recommends increases to sewer project rehabs and water facility improvements, and then eliminating or reducing water meter replacements so that he can prioritize all capital projects. That two items. And then he also recommends removing the capital contingency, since the projects won't be of the magnitude of those for which we would borrow. We would increase the operating contingency within the utility fund to balance, because there was a $9,500 difference there. Questions that Mr. Haltom or I could answer on utilities?
You explained to what I had.
Meter tech, I don't see the meter, you said a meter technician that he was requesting to keep, I don't see that on here.
Right, he is recommending that we do not eliminate that position, that we keep it in.
Is that,
It's paid for by utilities funds.
oh, okay.
And,
Oh, all right,
and
okay.
he feels it is essential for operations. You know, in light of the workplace incident that we had, and in the disruption that the meter reading process currently has to his operations.
Yeah, that was one of the questions I don't have, but if that's paid by the utility fund, then
I don't have any
I don't have
questions.
a question with that. And I just have one other statement or question, I think I know the answer. So none of these reductions or anything would affect the projects that we have underway, like the 156 and the Food Lion. Okay, I just wanted to say that out loud so that, you know, we know that infrastructure is still an issue. So we're continuing to move forward even with reductions that we're trying to make.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Tal, for
Thank you, sir, for your cuts.
I'm good, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Everybody else good with those last items? Ms. Waymack, you
That's
good?
good.
Okay,
I'm with you.
thank you, ma'am.
Okay,
Okay, moving on.
we'll move on to the big one now,
All right.
general fund. Okay, the general fund budget that was proposed on February 25th, $61,720,893. Due to revenue changes that we will be discussing this evening, there would be a reduction of nearly 1.4 million needed. The first line item is anticipated pandemic impacts of nearly 1.1 million. And some of those revenue sources we do share with the school division. Those revenue sources that we feel will be impacted are real estate and personal property taxes, along with our mobile home tax, of course our state sales tax, our business and occupational license taxes, which are based on those businesses' gross receipts for calendar year 2021, our motor vehicle license, and the general fund portion of our lodging tax. Those are the revenue sources that we feel will be impacted. And again, that is a $1,079,532 reduction that's estimated. There was a correction that we needed to make for a school resource officer grant that is expiring this year. We had proposed an increase to the BPOL tax rate, as those tax rates have not been updated since the 1980s. However, we are recommending, in light of the economic situation, not doing that. We discussed that with you at last week's work session.
Right.
So that's $189,499 reduction to the revenues that were proposed. Additionally, we had proposed permit fee increases for FY21. We are eliminating those as well for a general fund revenue reduction of $74,363 below what was proposed. You discussed the concealed weapon permit revenue earlier this evening, so I'm going to go ahead and put a 0 there because the board, by consensus, said they did not want to reduce that. So again, we will be talking about $1,396,657 worth of reductions on the expenditure side. Can you answer any questions on revenues before we talk about expenditures? Okay. Moving on to expenditures. Mrs. Waymack, this was a completely separate handout. At the top left, it's item 3D. Do you have that handout?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Thank you.
And we are moving on to page 2 of that handout.
All right.
The first line item is related to the school transfer. At last week's work session, the board discussed the public safety operating carve-outs, and the actions that you voted on by consensus, along with other recommended public safety reductions, led to an initial increase in the transfer to schools of $121,595. However, with the COVID impacts that were recapped in line item 1, the school transfer would be reduced by $351,033. Combined, there will be a reduction, or a total, a net reduction to the schools from what was proposed of $229,438. That ends up resulting in a school transfer of $680,745, which is just slightly less, $6,906 less than the transfer that's budgeted for this fiscal year. So essentially just about level funding from the county. questions on those two?
Mr. Rivers,
Yes, sir.
I may have missed something. The school resource officer, that was in parentheses, we're still gonna need to put the resource officers in all the schools, just like we've been doing. So we're not talking, when that had in there in red where we were cutting that funding, what is it, what exactly is funding cut? Was that cutting funding?
No, sir. I had erroneously budgeted some grant revenue that we're
okay.
not gonna get in
Okay, so
'21.
it's not.
So that was just a revenue error. We're not cutting an SRO from the expense side.
I just wanna make sure I was reading it right.
That's additional cost for it.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
As we discussed earlier this evening, your workers' compensation and LODA, line of duty act insurances will increase. Workers' comp by $40,606 above what was proposed. And of course, as we discussed, eliminating the newly proposed positions, I have taken out what I had budgeted for workers' comp for those new positions
Okay,
with
so you
those
already
positions.
compensated for it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Workers' comp, again, an increase of $40,606 in the general fund, and LODA, $3,826. The audit services that you approved recently to Robinson, awarding to Robinson Farmer Cox, is $6,500 above what we had included in the proposed budget within finance. So that is an increase as well. We are recommending a reduction of subsistence and lodging, 50%. There was only 5,000 budgeted, general fund wide, so again, that's a $2,500 reduction. Convention and education, a blanket reduction of 50%. However, we will need to restore that within two areas. One is our local administrative budget for Children's Services Act. That budget has to total $15,000. So even if we cut convention and ed, I would have to add that $1,600 back somewhere. We can certainly tweak the line item at your direction, but that budget does have to total $15,000. Victim witness is also grant funded, and that grant was written for a 2-year period last year, and that convention and education was included. The coordinator certainly may have to change how that convention and education is satisfied, probably some online opportunities versus traveling, but that budget is grant funded.
Okay.
So that would be a net reduction of $82,420 for convention and education. Next is training, which is typically, it's a little different than convention and ed. That's kind of on-site training or training that we provide or bring someone in-house to provide. Again, a blanket reduction of 50% was recommended. However, there is our Safer Recruitment and Retention Grant. Training is budgeted within that grant and does have to occur. It's 100% funded by Safer, and it is training for the new recruits. So we would need to restore $22,500 of that reduction. And that would be a net reduction in training of $59,005 when we combine those two items. I did want to call to the board's attention that the volunteer fire companies would certainly share in that reduction, and the emergency crew. The training for those organizations amounts to, or that reduction amounts to $27,450 for them combined.
Like you said, it's combined.
Yes, sir, it's all of them.
And this can be, we can look at this again
We can.
once everybody gets a clear message. We can look at this again once we get some data, because I'd rather do it now than turn around and not do enough and then turn right around, scramble, and figure out where we're gonna try to cut.
Right. Okay. The next item is item 14, and that is food. Within the general fund, we had already proposed with Mr. Ashcraft's budget of 50% reduction pretty much across the board. This is another 50% reduction, so really 75% of what was requested, and in most cases budgeted last year. So this is another 10,617. There were a couple of small restorations that we would need to consider. Again, that local CSA admin budget has to be 15,000, so if I cut $35 from food, I have to put it back to a different line item. And I believe they do feed, I believe Ms. Douglas reached out to you about some food within that CSA. It is for community, not necessarily employees, if you will. Board and care of prisoners is another. As Sheriff Allen's deputies transport prisoners, that particular food budget is for the prisoners that they're transporting, not for the deputies themselves.
Right.
So, all told, food would be reduced by another 10,332.
If they're held here for a certain amount of time, they have to feed them a lunch as well.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
In the public jail.
Okay. Questions before we move on? I know these are a lot of, we've got 40 to cover within the general fund. It is
I'm good so far.
fairly big list.
I'm good so far, too.
Okay. General services, Mr. Purvis had requested an increase in repair and maintenance supplies of 16.5. We would recommend that we keep level funding with what was budgeted in FY20, and just prioritize projects and really, particularly at the beginning of the year, deal with things that are on an emergency basis rather than beautification or things that could be delayed. The next line item is his repair and maintenance budget. We are recommending a $100,000 reduction. We had put in or proposed a $50,000 increase. However, this would result in a $50,000 reduction of where he is now. So again, we would prioritize projects and deal with essential and those emergency repairs first.
Mr. Chairman, if I might comment on that.
Yes, sir.
One of the things that I noticed when I first came here was that we had no maintenance program. We had beautiful buildings. Many of them were kind of new, but we had no maintenance program. I adhere to this cut. Matter of fact, I was the one that recommended it. But I just want us to always be cautious that without a maintenance program, and we're adding buildings. You know, we've added fire stations and we're doing some other things. If there's restoration to be done, either in this budget or in the future, I would appreciate consideration for that to be restored, because really that's not enough money. If you add the other 100, it's not enough money, but it's working. But I just want to bring that to your attention. We had no program 9 years ago, and I think we've come a long way in that area. And we're doing, especially in the courthouse. You can see what we've had to do to the courthouse.
Well, there's a lot of things, the improvements in, not beautification that's unnecessary, but just things that are necessary to keep from deteriorating.
That's preventive maintenance that they added.
That's exactly what it is, preventive maintenance. I mean, we need to take care of the assets, but hopefully this is just gonna be a short stint.
And I would hope that as we see the revenues pick back up, that there would be recommendations coming from your staff into
Priorities.
categories of, priorities of where we could add back. You know, because I don't think we're gonna be that close to it, so as long as I think you keep that as a tickler to say, if the revenues pick back up, we all agree that preventive maintenance on our buildings and stuff is important, so.
Mr. Chairman.
I mean,
Yes.
Mr. Drury, you had mentioned that if we, as all, everyone that spoke tonight, that if the revenues start coming in and we can add back or make changes to the budget, as long as we don't change it more than 1% of the total overall budget, we don't have to have a hearing.
Correct.
What if you see the revenue starting to increase and we change certain items every other month, and then you find out that we're getting very close to that 1%?
Well,
Is it a one?
the practice has been to only do a public hearing if we are making an individual change of 1%, not cumulative throughout the year.
That's what I need.
I don't know what Mr. Witten's position on that would be, but that's been the long time practice, that we only had a public hearing if we were making a change that night of more than 1%.
But as you do it a little bit at a time over 6 months,
Right,
then that would probably be okay.
yes.
Mr. Chairman, let me just say that, and I've told many of you individually, but let's just tell everybody that Ms. Drury gives a quarterly financial report. I see next budget year's quarterly financial report being a budget status, which would give you an update on revenues or expenditures and recommendations to adjustments in the budget. We don't do that. We do that now, we just don't have to do it very often. I could see that being every quarter, at least every quarter, that's what her quarterly report is going to turn into. She's going to give you a status report as she does, but there's likely to be budget recommendations, both revenue and expenditure in each quarter.
And if it starts looking good, implement some of the things we cut out.
Sure. And that's when, as Mr. Brown pointed out, that's when your staff recommendations will be for you to consider what you consider to be the priorities.
I like to go so far as to say that when we start seeing this coming out of the curve, that we also have a prioritized list. Because building, repairs of building, stuff like that, if left undone, can get worse or will get worse. There need to be a priority list on when we start picking back up. We need to go back and pick up the ones that are gonna hit us the hardest later down the road. It's like not doing maintenance on your vehicle. You can get away with it for a while, and then it costs twice as much.
And I also think, Mr. Chairman, on the flip side of that we don't overreact. If we do a review at the end of the first quarter and things still aren't tracking to even what we thought, if we think we can still weather the storm until the next quarter versus overreacting and making a change to the budget to cut out more, then you come back 3 months later and things have drastically picked up, so.
Well, it was in the paper this morning, the GDP is down 4%. The U.S. economy is down 4%.
I think Ms. Drury addressed this with me earlier in the week, is that really the 6 month
Is the best.
is where you get the true reading,
Yes, sir.
but you can have dramatic effects in a 2 or 3 month period. I mean, we've seen that just with the pandemic.
Exactly.
But the 6 month is where 6 month, 9 month, and then obviously the end of the year is where I think you're really going to be to see the trend.
Right.
I agree with you. I think we're gonna be in probably the latter part of the second or even the first part of the third quarter before we get any good data to really look at with what the laggards could be.
And of course, real estate tax is your largest general fund revenue source, and that's not due till December 5th, which is in the, at the end of the second quarter.
That's automatically gonna put us almost into the third quarter. before
Right,
we get it.
right, we'll see where we are at the end of December, and then, hopefully we'll be at the halfway point of what we budgeted. If not, we may, need to tighten.
Okay.
All right. The next, again, the 100,000 reduction would take the budget from 300,000 that's budgeted the year we're in to 250 next year, because we had recommended a 50,000 increase. As Mr. Ashcraft said, I honestly think we could spend whatever we budgeted, because we have that many needs throughout the whole county with all of our facilities. Parks and Recreation, we recommend a reduction in facility supplies. Specifically, those were some funds earmarked to refinish the gym floor at Central Wellness Center. So we're recommending that for elimination or postponement, certainly. IT equipment. Sorry, Cliff. Mr. Young had recommended increasing the number of annual replacements and doing some switch replacements. We're simply going to have to recommend that we delay that for a while.
Good. I got a question on that. This is like switchgear, correct?
Yes, sir.
And so it's critical to her system.
Mhm.
And you're okay with cutting that much?
I think we can manage for a while, I think.
Is it a long
We'll just have to
lead?
be prepared that, if something goes down, we'll just need to be ready to act on the fly. But there's nothing that's, I think, in critical condition right now. This is proactive
Are these
improvements.
long lead time items,
Um,
like the different electrical switch gear that the school had the other year? There was a three-week lead time on it.
Generally not. It could depend on what the specific type of equipment is, but most things that we use are fairly ready. We can get within a couple days,
Okay.
sometimes within a day or two.
Okay.
And then with some configuration and some work on the back side of that. But I
Okay.
think we'd be okay for now.
All right.
And we'll monitor it closely.
Yeah, I was gonna go there too, and that's the same type of question, because
Yeah.
it's the kind of thing you can live without it, but when it goes down, it goes down. And
Yes, sir.
everybody's affected by it, so just, try to stay on top of it. If you've got a feeling about something, you need to let us know, or let Mr. Ashcraft know.
We'll do. Yes, sir.
And the balancing that we're doing this evening, we still will have a contingency available when all is said and done. So certainly things that break or must be addressed, we could certainly bring you a recommendation to transfer funds from contingency to address those.
Okay.
The next item, item 19, is to eliminate our contribution to Richard Bland. It was proposed at $20,000, which was an increase over this year. And then concurrently to eliminate the planned contribution to John Tyler, $4,567. Again, we are recommending a reduction in fuel across the board for almost $50,000 of savings, hoping that the price stays down and that consumption on some level will decrease. There are some departments that are going to consume what they've always consumed, police being one, except perhaps for some small conference travel here and there. They will still be patrolling, obviously.
And this fuel also would cover fire and EMS.
Yes,
Because, those are, you're right, police, fire, EMS are two groups that they're gonna still be out there doing stuff,
Yes.
so. This may be one of those categories that we know what we have budgeted, but we have
We have
to
to
use what
spend
we
what-
need to use.
correct, and we may
That's
have
where I
to
was headed when I asked that question.
transfer from contingency to
Exactly.
sew up that hole. Yes, sir.
Right.
Yeah, it's throughout this fuel thing throughout this document, so it shows up in one place.
The next line item is elimination of the compression pay increase for general funded positions for savings of $46,499. The next item is eliminating the newly proposed deputy director of fire and EMS. That's a savings of $127,122 and did result. It's shaded in blue, so it restored a carve out from schools.
Could I ask a question? Maybe I misheard you. You said on number 22, you said the compression, you said 46,000 and 76,000?
76,000.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I may have heard it
76,499.
wrong, but
Yes.
That's what I thought I heard too, but I
Sorry.
looked at the paper
Might
and
have
it
said it
showed
wrong.
it.
No problem. I don't mean to
It was a
correct you.
test.
but I
It's
wanna make sure I understood.
76,499.
It's
Yes.
a test to make sure you're paying attention.
Oh, okay. It's a
I like to
test.
keep doing it.
That's what Sandy used to always say at school.
Mhm.
I'm testing you.
All right. The fire EMS deputy director would be a savings of $127,122. Turnout gear, the increase that was proposed was $23,945 to get the cyclical replacement on a 10-year life cycle. However, we would just recommend level funding for FY21. And you did elect to not carve that out from schools in the future. We would eliminate part-time wages within fire and EMS that were earmarked for increased paramedic certification. That savings would be $35,266.
Comment on this one. This is one of the ones that I would like to see with the, maintain an asset. Because basically, if you look at the data based on the calls we got and all, this would help move us forward, I believe, based on what your people tell you and, you know, what we do in the fire and EMS. But this might be something we wanna put at the high top of the list when we start seeing ourselves get better, where we can come back around and try to do something.
I see you talking about prioritizing this.
Yeah, it lists.
I got you, okay. Yeah.
It doesn't all have to be building assets, it's multiple priorities, and we just have to see what kind of money we got, and when it comes back around, and we're on solid ground. If that makes sense.
Yes.
The next reduction is to eliminate the newly proposed senior real estate appraiser for a savings of $95,354. Questions on that? All right, the next one is to eliminate the newly proposed information tech specialist. Sorry.
Case behind.
Savings of $76,257. Again, essentially, as we move through this, you'll find that all of the newly proposed positions have been eliminated, with one exception right now, and that is the position within social services in the general fund. However, that's predicated on a revenue discussion with Ms. Douglas, and she emailed me just today that in all likelihood, the governor has put pause on any expansion. So probably as we adopt, we will probably be bringing that to you as a revenue reduction and in a position elimination. So that will probably be in addition to this list, but it will impact revenues as well. The next two items are to eliminate the newly proposed police officers. Savings of $67,588 each. And again, that did result in an uptick in the school transfer because of the elimination of that carve-out.
And Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
these are the two officers. I wish there was, of course, all the cuts everybody's been a part of, but we have done or listened to the police department for the last several years, and we have brought that department up to where it's steadily progressing, and to have a year that we have to do this is, I hope it don't set them back any, but hopefully maybe as time goes on, that we might can restore these two positions, but not let them hire these two until possibly the last 6 months of the year after we see what the revenue does.
And once again, it can be brought forth at any time.
And I don't know if that's half the price, if you bring half the price for this year's budget, if you bring them in January and hire them and get them going. Of course, if they have to go to the academy and they're new applicants, then I'm not sure when the academy starts, but if they're officers from other jurisdictions that can start work without having to go through the training, it might not be as much, maybe half that cost for each one for the last 6 months of the year. And I don't know if we'll have money in the contingency fund at that point to maybe look at that. But again, just till January to look at it again and see where we're at.
I'm sure we'll be looking at not only that, but other things.
And I think that's the position I'm taking, is that all of this stuff can be relooked at somewhere down the road, again, once we start getting better data and seeing how things are gonna, move
But as
forward.
we're speaking on prioritizing as we go along, that's one that I would like to see it prioritize if things start looking good for them. That's all.
I can agree with that.
The next is eliminating the senior grounds maintenance worker that was proposed in Parks and Rec, $56,937 in savings. So essentially that's your general fund positions, with the exception of social services, which will probably be added to the list in short order.
And in social service, that still, with that group, that's still like a partial payment.
Right.
Because the state pays a certain percentage.
Correct. The state pays about 85% for
Right, so
that
we only pay
position.
about
We pay
15.
15.
Right, okay.
Right. So again, that will impact revenue, but it will be a net savings of about 15% of the cost of that position
Okay,
when we eliminate revenue.
that's what I remembered it as.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We are recommending reduction within the special events line item within county administration budget of $7,000. And employee recognition events within HR of $8,000. I don't know that we'll be able to have any face-to-face events in any event. We are recommending, PD had asked for an increase in overtime. We are taking that back down to level funding where they are this year. IT had asked for software of about $20,000. We are recommending eliminating that. If we can find a way to fund it this year, we will certainly work to do so if we're able. So, or if we can find a source of revenue within our investment proceeds, maybe we could do that. Professional services within the Board of Supervisor budget, which Ms. Knott maintains for you. We don't presently have any professional services earmarked, so we are recommending a reduction of $5,000.
I didn't realize that was in it. I must have, it's line item, of course, there's so many line items on it, I must have missed that. But what exactly was that intended for?
I guess a variety of items that could be requested by the board throughout the year. A study or an evaluation. It's there in the event the board would like to do a study or an evaluation of
I'll
something.
leave that one alone.
We didn't know it was there, don't tell us, we'll spend it.
Right,
Well, if we haven't used it, obviously we don't need it.
Yeah, it's not often used,
Okay,
I'll say that.
I was just curious.
We are recommending a reduction in Parks and Rec athletic supplies and equipment. Of course, spring sports were canceled this year. Uniforms, I think, had already been ordered for those sports, so we could use those uniforms next year when sports programs are restored.
That makes sense.
But again, we would probably need to bring that back up in FY22 to have a whole year's worth. Again, cut in special activities. It was proposed at 25. We are recommending a $10,000 reduction there. Mrs. Walton evaluated a part-time wage request that she had made and can reduce that request by $10,765. Contribution to FOLAR. Again, it's budgeted or recommended at $9,300 for FY21. We are recommending elimination similar to Richard Bland and John Tyler. And the B2 items are career development. Newly expanded new expansion was proposed to 5 general fund departments: the assessor, human resources, garage, attorney's office for the admin within the attorney's office, and our planning department. Again, by not expanding to those new departments, it would be a $5,920 savings. The last item prior to contingency would be pausing or suspending any new participation for career development or any new awards of career development for FY21. And of course, the departments that currently have career development in place are police, fire and EMS, animal services, the emergency communications center, community development and code compliance, social services, the finance department, general services, IT, parks and rec. The most participation is within the police department and social services department. We have a couple within animal services right now, but currently that's about it. There may be a couple within the emergency communications center as well. But again, it would just be to pause and not allow any new awards. We typically do that in January, so there might be folks that have already started taking classes now and participating in programs to get that award next January. So again, we would just pause it and allow them the opportunity perhaps the following year, or if revenues this year improve.
That's all I was requesting, to hit the pause on it, just until we can regroup and see where we're at.
Folks that currently have received an increase in their salary for career development would retain that increase. This is just new participants or moving up a tier. And we probably would need to be careful in how we word any language about this, because if we delayed it for an entire year, there might be folks that think they could get 2 awards in FY22. So we might just, I would recommend that we say it's suspended for the fiscal year with no new awards until which time it's restored. So that folks don't misunderstand that if they did 2 years worth of courses and work, they could get 2 awards or move up 2 tiers when it's restored.
It's a good word, it's well worth it for people to take advantage of it, it's just that with everything else going on.
Right. And that would result in a $93,656 savings. The final item is our general fund contingency, which to balance would actually see a slight increase. I will mention to the board, our general fund contingency that was proposed was $294,021, but part of that contingency was set that way because of the permit fees within community development code compliance. The new elementary school is a pretty sizable dollar amount. So kind of looking at that as maybe one-time money, and that's why on the expense side, we set that contingency, or at least part of the contingency up. So that the following year, if we had to cut that one-time revenue, we wouldn't be cutting an actual expense. It was a contingency. Right. So, again, all told, that's $1,396,657 worth of reductions from what was proposed. Questions or comments on any of those line items from board members?
Now it's getting depressing, so how much more are you gonna cut?
I had a question.
All right, Ms. Womack.
Ms. Drury, was anything reduced in the animal shelter?
No, ma'am. Other than compression pay increases that might have been earmarked for their staff, we
Okay.
kept the food budget within animal services is pet food, and we held that harmless. We left that as it was proposed. So no, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
So based on our total budget, this 1.3 million reduction is what percentage of our budget? Or what percentage of our reduction?
What percentage reduction from what was proposed?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Let me make sure I understood the question. That is a 2.26% reduction from the proposed budget, general fund budget. Yes, sir. And just to provide the board with a breakdown, that is county general fund reductions of $1,088,000 and decline in the transfer to schools of $229,438.
We still haven't heard from the schools on their requests.
Well, I had a discussion with the superintendent and finance director today. That's actually next on your agenda,
Oh, sorry.
so we'll get there. Just to mention, I did provide some additional pages. Reduction of the tax rate would mean another $280,000 reduction of real estate tax revenue. That's 1 cent reduction. We would need to make other general fund reductions of 161,056, and the schools would be reduced by nearly 119,000. So I don't know if there's discussion that you'd like to have.
I was just gonna say, though, with that reduction, you didn't prepare like any recommended areas.
Other than reducing the contingency, no, sir. We would recommend reducing the general fund contingency for that. And of course, it would reduce the school transfer by 119.
Mm-hmm.
For the 2 penny reduction,
It's in his handout.
Yeah,
Yes.
I saw that. I'm familiar with what the
we
numbers
would
are.
consider with 2 cents reducing to 84 cents. We would consider a reduction in pay, or possibly eliminating positions to balance beyond the 1 penny. And the same is true for
Yeah,
additional. Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
anything
We'll have to
for,
start selling buildings if you keep going.
Well, the double-edged sword is, even though we deferred,
maybe they'll pay me later.
and that fails, and or we dip further with the lagging numbers and all, we go down further.
Right.
We're gonna take a hit either way, and that you're not gonna be driving at that point, you're just gonna be along for the ride.
We may be faced with additional reductions, even if leaving the tax rate at 86 cents. Yes, sir.
Mhm. And then somewhere down the line, it's gonna catch up to us, because if assessments go down,
Right.
that means it's gonna drive the equalization number further below where we are.
You would actually equalize by raising the tax rate if your assessed values go down. That would be equalization.
Yep.
The opposite happens when you have decline.
You almost can't win, and I'd be one, if I was a betting,
That's just
I'm gonna bet the housing market is gonna go down.
Yeah, Mr. Compton feels certain that there will be some impact to sales prices in the market,
Right.
which will impact our
And
values.
foreclosures are estimated to go up drastically.
So 2022 is probably not going to be a cakewalk either. Just,
Well, you did a great job, everyone, but doing what you could to cut as much as you did cut. But it really brings reality. We don't have to sit up here and guess about tax rates and what it would look like. You laid it out for us. And it's pretty cut and dry, because this is reality that's in front of us. Let's just hope this pandemic can come to an end sooner than later. Or I hate to see what it's gonna look like.
I hope we don't have a repeat, that there says could potentially happen in the winter time. But either way, that's not here yet.
And even with this cut, I mean, we're able, as Mr. Ashcraft said, with that report that came out about Tech, can withstand the pandemic as it is today, as far as financially. At least we're a county that can still continue to function and do a lot of good for our citizens. There's some out there that are not gonna make it. Some of these cities and counties are just, and some close to us, they're gonna have a hard time without any federal help or state help.
Well, statistically, they say the mom and pops are the ones across the country that are gonna take the biggest hit. That's
right.
really the backbone.
That's correct.
Very sad.
That's the backbone right there.
It just still bothers me, and I get it, I see the numbers, and they're right smack in our face. But to still hear the people that are on the fixed incomes with no chance of earning extra money to have their real estate assessments increase when they're struggling today.
Well, our parents are one. My 87-year-old mom at home on Social Security hasn't faced this.
This is, I mean, 84 would be hard to get to, but, you know, definitely can't get to 84, not by what I see here.
Yes, sir, I don't think so.
And 85, the only thing we could do at 85 is, like you said, it reduces the contingency, but all we could do then is hope that as things pick up, we can get back into the contingency, but at least that would help to offset people by some little bit.
If we lose our contingency, we lose our hope of recovering from any kind of fiasco.
Will you be forced to go to the fund balance?
Right, and I really hope we don't have to do that.
And that's where we're somewhat fortunate, because most of the localities I'm talking to, they are raiding their fund balance.
Right.
Just to survive.
If we can survive and leave our fund balance as it is and have a small contingency like Mr. Rui just presented, I think we have done well for our county. And I agree
For the
with
short
you.
term.
I hate to see it for those folks that are gonna have to struggle to make the ends meet.
Yeah, the big advantage we have right now, I'm not saying advantage, I mean, we talk about we can come back later down the road as things improve and we can add back. The downside is we can't come back down the road and decrease the real estate assessment, you know, because it would already be in effect. So,
Hopefully.
yeah, so I mean, you know, with these other things, I think it's it's not as muddy, because as revenues increase, that gives us an option to add some things back into the budget.
Well, of course, we've done a lot of favorable things for the people. No increase in utilities, no penalties for late payments or taxes, things like that. We're doing all we can, well, maybe not all we can, but we're doing a lot to try to help alleviate the pain, so to speak.
I even like the bill our miners. I mean, we've got X now, we got 5 X's now. It was on the CFP. The generator at the high school has been on the CFP. Is it needed? Yes. When we can afford it, we'll have to try to come back and see what we can do about securing some grants or something and acquiring it. Mr. Drury, I appreciate everything your team and all the department heads have done. I know it seemed like some of us, including me, were pulling teeth and asking for a lot of questions, but y'all have rallied. You went back and cut everywhere that you cut a little bit more than what I found, to be honest with you. And I spent a lot of time for that 2
Team
weeks
effort.
looking at this.
Wasn't just me.
So you're ahead of me still. Which you should be. You're a finance person, so you should be.
Appreciate that. So the board on, May 12th, will have a public hearing on the tax rate, and we'll hopefully set the tax rate that evening. So if you prefer right now not to have a consensus vote on this, you know, that action will essentially take care of this. I will go ahead and advertise a modified budget with these reductions. If that-
Everything was in red that we talked.
Yes, sir.
I'd say we'd take a consensus now, so we're all on the same page. If we're not in agreement that this is where we're at, then we may need to try to have another meeting, or sit here and try to work through and discuss it. If somebody else has got some ideas, you can find something else.
Well, I'll say, I think Mr. Drury and staff have done an excellent job in cutting anywhere that we could possibly cut. I mean, I see some things that were cut in there that, you know, the departments, I think, have gone to bare bones. But it's just like the police officers and some of the other things that we've talked about, you know, put them high on the priority if the V comes back up to our favor.
Right.
But at this point, I think we've done as much as we could with the, you know, given the favorable long-term debt or lack of interest on payment of fees and payment of taxes and all of those things. I think we tried to meet in the middle ground, because we're not getting revenue in by saving at this point. So I don't think we can do a whole lot more. So yes, I'm in favor of presenting like it is.
I'm in favor. Y'all good?
Yes.
I know you're struggling with it. I am too. but-
Ms. Waymack, are you in favor for presenting like it is?
Yes.
We couldn't do what we.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm struggling with it still, like I said.
I think we all are, Mr. Brown.
I'm just, we still need to advertise. I'm okay with advertising at 86 still. I'm okay with advertising this revised budget. I'm just still not in a good place right now.
Well, we can appreciate that. But yes, ma'am, it looks like the general consensus is that to go ahead with that.
Okay. And certainly on May 12th, the public hearing on the tax rate will occur, and you'll have opportunity to vote on the tax rate.
Thank you so much.
Okay. The next is a kind of a verbal update. I did receive some information from the school system that they are still struggling to determine what their state revenues might be. They're getting limited information, as are all of the departments impacted with state funding, about reductions. They are concerned about their sales tax as well as lottery proceeds. I believe I mentioned that to you last night.
You did.
So they did furnish me with some updated revenue projections, revenue reductions, and some expenditure reductions that the school board will be considering Monday night. I don't have any details on expenditures. You know, they will be wrestling with what to cut, very similar to what we've done on the county side. But they are also budgeting some CARES Act federal grant revenue that will probably be one time for FY21. So they're not sustaining an overall reduction from where they are this year. It's still an increase, but I do have numbers that I can include in the advertisement. Revenues by source, state, federal, local, and other. I don't have details on expenditures other than a grand total of what they will be considering.
And we in the past, we've supported them with the impact aid.
Yes, sir.
For the projects and stuff that they've identified they needed to do. But that's like, there again, it's like, that won't be until like mid-year, at the end of the year. By then, we ought to have a pretty good idea what road we're on, and how fast we're running,
Yes, sir.
as far as coming in or out of this thing.
Yeah, schools are a major, important aspect of the county as people look at law enforcement, public safety in general, housing, and schools. Schools are a big thing. So we certainly want to support them every way we can.
So I do have adjusted revenue numbers, or reduced revenue numbers from what they proposed. I think they will be continuing to work through projections between now and the time you adopt. So if we could be flexible, and I've asked if they could try to get me numbers maybe the week before your May 26th meeting, and I can provide it, because we do include their totals in our total adopted budget.
Do you know if they're going through the same exercise as y'all have been and doing?
I'm sure they are. Yes, sir. I'm sure they are. I'm sure they're meeting with.
Well, not that they won't, but have they
Principals
got
and
to that point
departments.
yet?
I don't know. I don't know exactly where they are,
Okay.
as far as making recommendations. I believe they'll be discussing it with the school board at their meeting Monday night.
They're actually meeting tomorrow night, aren't they?
I think so. I didn't see it on their calendar, and I'm not sure what the agenda
I
and
think-
topics are.
I think Ms. Walton mentioned last night, they're meeting tomorrow night, but that's on the school, the building, the project.
Design.
That's a design meeting, is what I understood her to say.
And that's gonna have, multiple people in that meeting, so they won't be discussing nothing but that.
Item 5 is proposed FY '21 capital projects. And there is a separate handout that looks like this. I'll pull it up so that everyone can see it. Okay, these were the capital projects that, oh, sorry, let me switch. I'm gonna stop sharing one and share the other.
This one here?
No, I mean, I didn't see it on the screen. I
Oh.
got that one.
Oh.
I don't see it on the screen.
I got you.
Just one second. Bear with me just a minute as I work through my technical inexpertise.
I do have a couple, when you get to this, I do have a couple questions on this.
We all have our handout unless you.
Okay, I've got it now. All right, this was on, titled, agenda item number 5, Mrs. Waymack.
Thank you.
Okay, and it's a document that has some green shading. This was the listing of capital projects that were recommended for FY '21. These are in the exact order as ranked by the CIP committee, with the exception of Beasley Elementary, which was removed and delayed for a later time. And to support the completion of these projects, we did propose and have left in the budget a contribution to the debt fund of $1,262,500. In talking with the school system, should the board choose to change any of these projects or not complete any of these in FY '21, the priority from the school system is certainly New Walton, which I think the board has expressed a commitment to completing. But next would be the technology infrastructure. That would be their next priority. They have actually applied for the E-rate funds and have gotten an extension on using those E-rate funds. However, those do have to be expended in FY '21 and completed by September of 2021. So that was the communication from Dr. Pennycuff when we talked. Next would be the buses and then the generator.
Let me ask you a question, Ms. Drury.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
If you delayed the generator, because my assumption was when we were looking at some of this stuff, you got the generators, the Dolars, the expansion of the garage, and police and county vehicles, but school buses in, let's talk about the other first. If you delayed those and took those out, and then what if we took and reduced the school buses and also the police vehicles by 50%?
Well, the police vehicles this year was a variety, not only police, but county vehicles as well. And that 400,000 has been in there for a number of years.
Yeah.
So that's kind of rolling stock. That's a flat, that's not creating an increase in this contribution.
No, I didn't think it was. I was just thinking as far as if we needed to look for some space, kind of like hitting pause on it. I mean, that generator's been on that CIP list, I know. I'm not saying it's not needed.
What was your 3 items again, Mr. Webb?
Well, we can have Davenport run updated numbers on any scenario.
delaying them for 1 year, delaying them for 2 years. We would just need specific direction on what you'd like for us to do. But I will tell you, that 1,262,000, it's not gonna drop by a lot because the school is what's driving the vast majority of that contribution.
Right, but the difference on one of them is, let's just take, can I have my paper back? The school generated 179,220, correct? I mean, that's what's on the sheet I'm reading out.
Yes, sir.
The Zolar thing are 157,276. To me, that's one thing I was talking about earlier, about let's get a handle on exactly what we need going forward and how many, and let's look for some grants or something to help kind of offset this.
I'm actually meeting with Captain Corin on Friday to talk about some grant opportunities, but there is a local match. It's a 50-50. So
Right, but
this would be
50-50
local
We
match.
understand it, say we got 5 now, so you got 5 X units right now in 5 of the 7 ambulances, if I'm correct, if my data's correct. You get a grant on a 50, even a 50-50, the low end, you get a grant on a 50-50. So you go for 3, you match the grant, you wind up getting 6. So you don't get 6, you buy 2, and you get 4. That make sense?
That is exactly what they're looking at doing. They're looking to get 9 in total.
Where's the
And
9
this-
going? Well, and we can do that another time, because I'd like to be grounded on exactly what are we trying to accomplish.
Are those 5 the ones that are 13 years old?
No, we got 5 X's now that are in the medic units, 5 of the 7 medic units, right now?
Right.
Okay, and it also takes at least, from what I understand, is an ALS or above to be able to use them.
Right.
Okay, so where are you gonna put 9 new ones if you already got 5 X's out there now? And I'm just gonna say X's versus E, because E's is what's on some of the fire trucks now.
Right.
So is the intent to try to put these on every vehicle we got?
I think it's the first responder units, which might not be a box. It might be on a first responder fire truck.
And all I'm saying is that may deserve a little bit more discussion so we can get grounded, or I can get grounded. I'll just say me,
Certainly.
I'm the one bringing it up, on exactly what the short-term and the long-term game is and where are we trying to get.
Mr.
Because we got other needs out here too with the paramedics and stuff like that that we're looking at. We also got equipment needs, so.
Mr.
Well,
Chairman,
I thought they said that some of these defibrillators were gonna be expired.
they will be expiring in February of next year.
Okay.
2021, yeah.
Right.
However, you got 5 of the X models now that are on 5 of the 7 ambulances is what, I'm pretty sure that's what I understood that the Greg Kafflinger told me last night.
That will not expire.
That when, no, they're new, they're the X model, they're what they're trying to, what the other one's trying to get.
Well, we'll talk with Mr. Briggs Friday.
And as you said, they're having a discussion about grants too. So we'll
We are,
get more information.
Captain Corin and I are meeting on Friday morning to talk about the grant application. But essentially, this would become local match. And I just want to mention, 84% of this total is the new elementary school. So changing the other line items, it's not going to buy you a lot of reduction in that 1,262,000.
Mr. Chairman, that's what I wanted for the board to understand.
Right.
If you make decisions on either reduction or elimination of any of these or delay, I think you're looking for cash. You're looking for how can that translate into real dollars that you may be able to capture or reduce. And I think that's what her point is.
We're not going to save $157,000 by doing something different with the zone monitors. We are reserving $1,262,000 to pay the debt later. We're going to finance all of these items.
Well, I understand that, but if you're doing 50-50 match, it's not gonna be the 157.
Well, they want to do 9, so it would be pretty close to that 157. And then again, I don't have the fine details on how many. And I believe that's probably why they put the 5 in here as a placeholder, because they wanted to do about twice as many.
One of our other sheets on another line item,
Yes, sir.
the fire renovation for Company 1, which I've already mentioned, finished the design on even Jefferson Park, and we may have to put hit the pause button on that. That number I saw that was on that carve-out sheet that we all didn't agree on was 144. This is showing 2.5. So which one is it?
Mr. Chairman.
I mean, that's a big difference.
We've not done a really a design or any kind of study as to what is the scope of that project. It's been estimated between the two figures that Mr. Webb has referred to. My recommendation now would be, if we're interested in doing that project next, we need to develop a scope of work, define parking has been questioned, exactly what they want to have to fit their needs. I've talked to some folks at Company One. I think they're satisfied with at least knowing what they don't know now through some design work. So I think you're safe in moving that project to FY22. If you want to do it, then go try to get you some understanding through some design work. I'm not talking about architect. I'm talking about, you know, testing of soils and make sure parking is good.
Make sure you got a good scope of work.
That's correct. We do not have that. This is just, I think it's a little more than the back of a napkin, but not much more.
I think they would be happy knowing that we are going forth with some design research, so to speak.
That's what, I thought that's what we agreed to way back when, before we ever started the budget work sessions. And then this thing started progressing. It's like, even the garage, that's needed. I know we got heavy apparatus, we can't get in the building. Some of it we can't get in the building, it's needed. But, and I could be wrong on my numbers, Mr. Drew. I swear to God, I thought something like maybe 1.2, 1.25 to start with for the expansion. And this right here is only 2.1.
Turned into more, yes, sir.
I mean, to me, for me, TJ, it's too big of a gap for me to be comfortable with, sit here and start saying I'd agree with it to go forward with it.
I
From my standpoint.
I too remember that I saw a figure compared for Fire Station 1 at 1.5. Rather than
It was 144 is what was on that carve-out sheet.
You're right.
Yeah,
Well,
1.5.
the 144 is just the proportionate share of that 1,262,500
Okay.
that are public safety items.
Okay.
The Company One renovation, the defibrillators.
I
That's
like
the
that price a lot better than I
proportionate
do this one.
share. Well, that's just what we're carving out, but I will tell you, if you tell us not to do that project, the school transfer will uptick. So we'll be making a bigger transfer to schools. We'll be
It'll be
saving a
going to
little
the
bit out of this 1,262,500, but we'll be sending a little more to schools.
Well, in all
And that's
honesty,
fine, and that's
and I didn't
fine.
want to get you off track. If adding, because I put a lot of thought into it, I know what my thought process was when I made that statement the other night. And believe it or not, I still believe that I should have used proactive versus reactive, but that's neither here nor there at the end of the day. If that's that big a deal, and we've got these other lists on here, then I think you take the police officers off the carve-out, you leave the school, and you leave the ordinance that we already agreed to from the very beginning, until we can get our heads wrapped around and get a little bit more defined definition and philosophy on what that would really look like. Because you get into slicing and dicing what the school is gonna get versus what we're gonna keep. And if you get on the other side of the fence, it could appear that we're playing games and we're trying to screw with them. And that wasn't the intent. I'm the one that mentioned, I know I said screw, the hell with it. Oh, that's right, wrong here. Never mind, hell with it. That wasn't my intent.
Right.
When I was trying to look out for the taxpayer as far as their kid count with that, whether it's 43.6 or 43.7, whatever the ratio winds up being, which just to say 1/3%. That's what my intent was. It was never to hurt the schools. It was try to put things in buckets, just like you just said. The school bus has got a bucket, so you know that's always gonna be there. You don't have to worry about trying to get, what are you gonna do this year? You've got something to go by. Police vehicles were the same way. It makes it easier and more streamlined for things that you know are reoccurring that you have to have. Then you can just deal with the stuff that's somewhat cyclical or kind of floats from year to year based on
Like a new
cost.
courthouse.
Yeah.
Well,
Exactly.
if there are items, you know, we could try to get a consensus this evening on things that you might like to delay. The way the model was built this year, you know, they would have to build it to tell us what year do you want it delayed? Delay it 1 year, delay it 2 years, and I can get an answer from Davenport pretty quickly.
Well, I was working off, when we talked the other night, that if we delayed something, you were pretty sure, and I know you weren't firm on it, that it would have to happen within 3 years.
Well, we
Somewhere
have
in
not
that time.
borrowed for any of these projects yet.
Right.
The ones we discussed, the ongoing projects that we've already borrowed for,
Right.
we would need to complete within 3 years of borrowing, or have to pay perhaps a penalty.
But when we,
The
once we
rebate.
hit the go button and we borrow,
Right,
now we're locked into a time frame.
yes. So I guess what I'm asking, are there projects on this list that you would like to delay and not borrow for next year?
Let me ask this if I can. What would it cost to do a preliminary study, or whatever you want to call it, for the Station 1? Are we talking about 100?
No, I'd say, I'm gonna be broad, I'd say between 10 and 25,000.
All right, so if we set $25,000 aside and say that we're gonna put the Company 1 fire station on the following year, would that not be a benefit to us to do it that way, Mr. Ray, or would you see that as a detriment?
Yes, sir. What would happen is if I told Davenport, okay, we're going to move Company 1 renovations to FY 2022. We're gonna delay that for a year. They would come back probably with a slightly smaller number than this $1,262,500. Instead of contributing that to debt, you could put it in to general services or county admin or board of supervisors and have that study done for the savings. However, taking that off the carve-outs for schools will also mean we'll be sending a little more to schools, which is fine. We would figure all of that out.
And I don't have a problem with that either. I think that would be in the best interest of what we're trying to do myself.
Yeah, because whatever we decide on, it's something we would be living with going forward. It's not, I didn't see it as something that would change year to year, so everybody would know what the rules of the game were, how it was defined. So if, you can't just put something on the list this year and then turn around and decide to take it off next year. I don't see where that benefits us long term for either side trying to work together, or for us trying to stay on the same page. That's what I was trying to get at.
But see, the fleet garage number, it was mentioned that it was a smaller number months ago. Is this the, Mike did do a study for
Mike did a
this.
study.
This is a real number.
Out of his budget. It is a real number. However, the bids could certainly come in different, but it is closer to
So
real, yes, sir.
we did invest some money into a scope of work for this. So this is pretty accurate as far as at least getting documents ready for bidding. Company 1, it's just been conversation.
And with the new elementary, even with what all we've done, and if they say COVID-19 just kind of levels out and we do come out of, even with the last projection, we're still stressing one of our financial policies, correct? When they're one of the 4 we were
Yes.
gonna be stressing.
Doing the school is gonna cause you to be out of compliance with one of your policies. It is.
And I
Just-
know I
just doing
voted,
the
I
school.
committed to it, but I'm very uncomfortable getting that far out. It's like being at your max limit on your credit card, and there's no way to get back. But you know, we committed to it, and I'll stand behind what my vote was. I said I'd support it.
Well,
Does anybody else have comments? I just think to get a real number for the Company 1 would be good, myself. And if it,
Put it up for a year?
and if it enhances the funding for the schools, well, that's okay,
yeah,
because
that's fine.
they're gonna need some more money anyhow. So we might as well give them
So,
And they're gonna be in the same shape we're in.
if what I'm hearing is by consensus, we want to tell Davenport, okay, we're going to delay Company 1 renovations until 2022, rerun the model, and see what we need to contribute. Can we contribute less than this $1,262,500?
And if we can, it's gonna be probably a small number. My guess is it's gonna be in the $30,000 range.
But that would be the money that we
Right,
could
we
use for
can
the study.
instead use it to do the study, and then the school transfer would increase proportionately. So,
No, no,
so
no.
I can email Davenport first thing in the morning or before I leave tonight and ask them to run that. Are there other projects on this list that,
No, I'm happy with the rest of them myself, but I'd like to get a real number for that thing, and it may be more than 2.5, you know, maybe less.
it
Let's
might
get a real
reveal
number.
that they can't do what they need to do within the footprint of that land.
Sure.
Might lead to telling you they need a new
What if,
station.
it's hard to say what it might lead to.
It
but
might
let's-
lead to a lot of
Let's get
things.
a real figure and
Okay,
put that on next year, if that's okay with everybody else.
Ms. Wakeman?
I think that's a good idea. Let's get a real number.
Is the way we would do it.
Yeah, I'm okay with that part. I'm uncomfortable with a couple of the other items though.
Yes.
all right, so I will do that, and I will let you all know what the outcome of that is. I can certainly add that as an agenda item on May 12th, or email you the information prior, so that on May 12th, we're prepared to walk through those changes.
If you get it sooner and you can drop us
Sure.
the email,
Sure,
that gets us a second to digest it.
yes, sir. Happy to do
About
that.
the other items, we're saying we're gonna borrow for these other items?
I am. I don't know what the rest of them saying.
Now, the garage, like you said, that's a needed thing. You know, the other school items, you know, they're gonna be asking for those anyhow. Hopefully, the Zoll monitors, Ms. Drury will have a little bit better information on that,
Yes, sir.
and we can.
So I'm a little shocked to hear we were talking 5, now we're talking 9.
Yeah,
And we just need to understand the big picture.
In my line of work, it's called scope creep.
yeah, we'll see what.
I think we need to have some discussion on that one, Mr. Chair. I mean, you can leave it on there for now, but we need to have some discussion.
And I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that, because I don't know the answer.
We've done a whole lot in the last 2 or 3 years.
On page 5 of that handout, we recapped the request. I'll flip to that too. Keep forgetting.
You said page 5?
Yes, sir. That is the Zoll monitor
Yes.
page.
Yeah.
The description indicated that was submitted by Fire and EMS. They're currently using E-Series, which is over a 15-year-old platform that won't have Wi-Fi or data capabilities. The X-Series has only reached 40 to 50% capacity. This investment would last the county. Currently, the county has 5 X-Series monitors and 8 E-Series monitors. And they would like to replace the 8 E-Series, but I think for this year, they limited their request to 5 within the CIP. My understanding is that they had 8 in need of replacement, however, they were requesting 5. And the information that Jason emailed me today was a quote for 9. I'm not sure, again, I need to meet with him to sift through the details. I couldn't meet with him this
So
afternoon.
what does it cost per unit? If we're talking, just say 5, because that's what I was led to believe to start with.
Let me pull up his email.
If it's 157, 276 for 9, is that a good math, or that's not the right?
The
Well, that's
quote
fine.
has actually been updated probably since the CIP.
And I think she'll be able to bring it to you, but I think there's a payment plan where you can spread it out over 5 years.
Right.
Yeah, but what,
At no interest, but I don't know how.
But right, but if you get a grant, what is the total cost of the 5? Is that going to be, is this 157, 50% of the 5?
That's what you.
It's probably a little bit more than 50%. But again, they've provided some trade-in, and some accessories and chargers. The total cost for the 9 units, I believe it was 9, yes, was $257,646.70.
For 9.
Right, but if we reduce the quantity, that total could change because of the trade-ins. There was a 3,000 per unit discount with trade-ins. So again, if we divide that number by 9, it's approximately 28,627 per unit. But again, if you reduce the quantity, that trade-in value would fall.
Yeah, well, once again, once you talk with,
Yeah, let's wait.
Capricorn, you
Okay.
can get some hard figures to the guesstimate.
Yes, sir.
So, you know, we can leave it on there for now, we can always remove it before we do the actual boring, right? Or-
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yes, sir. I will, for now, I will ask Davenport to leave it on, and just reduce the company 1. Again, if we were to change that number and get grant funding for half of it, it would certainly be a little bit less than the $1,262,000, but I don't think it would be very, very much from that
That's
capital.
fine, but I'm not sure I'm good with 9. But
Yeah.
we need to maximize the amount of money of what we're trying to do, and I, for one, if I'm gonna vote for it and support it, I at least wanna know what the intent in the long game is.
I agree, I don't have any problem with that at all. I think we all need to know that.
We can talk about maybe even adding it as a work session item for May 12th, if the board would like to do that.
Let's have our discussions with,
Okay, Captain Corin.
if he's representing the department on that, and.
Yeah, he is.
We'll get you information as it progresses.
And if possible, could we have it before the meeting?
Sure. Oh, absolutely.
Right, that's what I.
Yeah, you had already answered, just reiterate that. I'd like
And
to
if
see
at all
it stuff
possible-
before the meeting, so I can at least look at it myself and
Yes, sir.
In addition, maybe he can add where the 9 are going, to answer your question, so we're all knowing ahead.
Well, and while we're on this, when I look at equipment, as far as, I know I was told the other night, these are wireless, so they're somewhat tied with an address number to a vehicle they're assigned. But because of the cost of this equipment, what I'm used to, anything over $5,000 is capital, okay? And a capital asset is assigned an asset number. And that asset number is documented and it's logged on like what vehicle it went through, or what locations it's at. It also takes care of any type of warranty information, and it also tracks any repairs that have to be made to that piece of equipment, which gives you a running history. So when you start evaluating replacing it, you can tell whether or not, okay, this is close to the end of its life, it's costing us X number of dollars to maintain it. And you need to start looking at replacing versus popping up and coming up with these that are coming up here we go again, February 2021, and they're gonna expire. They're at the end of their useful life.
And it gives you a running total, how much repairs you did on that certain item.
Exactly.
So it doesn't get floated around other vehicles.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it just makes good business. I don't know, y'all need to mull it over, but I think we ought to look at stuff
I thought
like
that was
that.
normal practice.
But
I don't think so.
Anybody disagrees with that.
Fire
It's
Fire
got-
and EMS recently did purchase and began recording their equipment and assets in a asset system. I know Mr. Talmadge at the garage has asked for fleet management software that would,
To track, warranties and
it
stuff
would
like that.
track repairs and warranties, et cetera. However, we've not been able to fund that at this point. It's certainly a needed investment.
Then we do exactly what Mr. Webb says.
Well, the lift would be another thing. Lift in a picture for this expansion. That's part of that, if that lift is part of the expansion. That's an expensive piece of equipment.
Yep.
And we ought to track it. I mean, it can save you a ton of money, it pays for itself.
Nobody's arguing that.
Okay.
All right, well, I will have Davenport rerun, that with the postponement of Company One renovations. And we will get you more information on the defibrillators. Okay. All right. So the last item on the agenda is the discussion of updated timelines. We've already mentioned these at your April 28th meeting. We requested the authority to advertise the tax rate. That ad was emailed to the Progress Index this morning. And I will be emailing to the Progress a budget advertisement and conduct that public hearing on May 12th along with the public hearing on tax rates. We would tentatively or schedule adoption of the budget for May 26th. We cannot adopt on the same evening we have the public hearing. It has to be at least 7 days.
That's the
later.
following meeting.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Any questions?
I think that's what we all agreed.
Yep.
I'm good.
Now, we talked about, talking about the borrowing to include the defibrillators. And we're gonna do that in the work session prior to our next meeting, is that right?
Yes, sir. We can bring you updated meeting on May, updated information on May 12th, and that way we're prepared for adoption on the 28th.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Rather than, we don't need to make another work session for that item, one item. Is that correct? Everybody agree with that?
Yes.
I got one other question.
Yes.
You want to say something? They're getting ready to apply for a grant. How long will it be? See, that's the other data we need. How long is it going to be before they get the grant? Because why would we borrow the money if we don't have a grant?
I can provide you.
I mean, normally when we get a grant, we commit to it, they go get the grant, then we come back and we provide the
I know they
funding for it,
submitted
we commit to
the
it.
grant, either they just submitted it or they're about to submit it, because I know I helped them get a couple of letters of support for it. So they've got a grant, I think, through John Randolph and through Cameron. Is
They've
that
got
right?
applications out to both.
I mean, that'd be good piece of information, there, so you know exactly.
So what comes first, the reward of the grant or the borrowing?
Well,
Since I've been on the board, they've come to us asking for a grant. We've consensually agreed to them going and getting the grant, and if they got the grant, we agreed to pay the percentage that was presented, not the other way around. I mean, have we not? I don't know that we've ever done it differently since I've been on the board.
you typically have
You're right.
granted authority to apply for grants if there's a local match.
But the downfall, if we tell them to take this out of the borrowing process, go after the grant, and then they get it.
Well, the grant's not gonna cover the whole cost.
Well, what I was trying to get at, you just opened it up. If you take it out and things are coming back and they get the grant, this may be one of the things we put on the list as priority list. I thought you'd said it earlier, we put it on the priority list, and as soon as we see a way clear after we get data on it, maybe the second or third quarter, and get some good data, we take the money, we pull it, and we pay our part for the grant when they know they got it in hand. Once we can agree on whether it's gonna be 5 or 9, but either way.
Well, can we not decide at next meeting, which way you wanna go?
That's what I asked, do we have to decide now, or can we give you time to do your work on
I
Friday?
can ask Davenport to run the scenario just postponing the fire station, and I can also ask them to run it
Right,
postponing the fire station and removing the Zoll monitors.
Yes.
Run both of them.
yes.
We'll run
We'll
both
have
scenarios.
Well, actually, when I said to school in my vote, I thought we had already said that the monitors were already on the list. I didn't know that it wasn't, because we'd already passed that conversation. But yeah, I would do that.
Okay,
I would ask to do that.
okay. We can certainly do that.
Have you followed that, Ms. Waymack, where we are?
Yes, I did.
Okay, fine. So you're gonna, Davenport's gonna run it two different
Yes, sir.
ways.
Yes, sir.
One with the school, without the, firehouse, one without the firehouse, or the zone monitors.
Correct.
Super, super. Yeah, all right.
Thank you.
That'll all come back to us, on the
Work
12th.
session, right?
Yes, sir. May
Work
12th.
session.
Work
Friday,
session,
six
We
o'clock.
can cover both topics.
Six.
At 6
That's
o'clock.
Oh, no, 6.
Mhm.
Right, the work session, 6 o'clock.
I'm not sure there's any stuff.
And that also would be the same night as the hearing, the public hearing.
Tax rate and budget, yes, sir.
And we'll vote on the tax rate. Anything else to come up before tonight?
No, thank y'all very much for y'all's hard work.
Yep. Thank you for everything you did.
Thank you.
Everybody stepping up.
Mr. Gray and all the other department heads that have given the information, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Young, for keeping this in the public view.
Just keep it going one more year with what you got.
All right. You have anything further, Ms. Weber?
Thank you, Ms. Drury.
Thank you.
Okay, with that in mind, entertain a motion to adjourn to May the 12th, at 7 o'clock. So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mrs. Waymack,
Yes.
Mr. Webb,
Yes.
Mr. Hunter,
Yes.
Mr. Carmichael.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.